After freshly acquiring the Prime Minister post in the general election of 1967, the next challenge for Indira Gandhi was to consolidate power and seek independence from the collective leadership of the syndicate. Doing this, she turned sharply to the left-wing politics. Today, we are going to discuss why and how Indira Gandhi was transformed to the socialist politician. Nehru was a well-read and widely traveled man. Through his travels and readings, he arrived at a synthesis of socialism and liberalism that he thought appropriate to his country. Nehru articulated an ideology that rested on four main pillars. First, there was democracy. Then second, there was secularism. Third, there was socialism. And finally fourth, there was non-alignment. With Mrs. Gandhi, one cannot be so sure. She had neither read nor travelled extensively. She was unquestionably a patriot, growing up in the freedom movement and with its leaders. She was deeply committed to upholding India's interest in the world. In all the years she had been in politics, her core beliefs had not been revealed to either party or public. They knew not what she really thought of the market economy or a Cold War or the relations between religions or the institutions and processes of democracy. The many volumes of Nehru's selected works are suffused with his writings on these subjects on which Mrs. Gandhi had not spoken a word before 1967. But her advisers were not non-ideological. Chief among them was her principal secretary, P. N. Haskar. Educated at the London School of Economics, he was called to the bar in the UK before returning to practice law in Allahabad. At independence, he joined the Foreign Services and served as India's ambassador to Austria and its first High Commissioner to Nigeria. In 1967, he was Deputy High Commissioner in London when Mrs. Gandhi asked him to join her secretariat. Haskar and she shared a hometown and many common friends. Haskar was kind of polymath, a student of mathematics. He was also keenly interested in history, particularly diplomatic and military history. His political views were those of the left wing of the British Labour Party circa 1945, pro-state and anti-market in economic affairs, pro-Soviet and anti-American in foreign policy. Indira trusted Haskar's intelligence and judgment implicitly and completely. From 1967 to 1973, he was probably the most influential and powerful person in the government. Haskar shared his influence and power with the career diplomat T. N. Cole, the politician turned diplomat D. P. Dhar, the economist turned Mandarin P. N. Dhar, and the policeman turned security analyst R. N. Kaur. Collectively, they were known behind their backs as the Panch Pandav, after the five heroic brothers of the Mahabharata. Coincidentally, all were Kashmiri Brahmins. There was also an outer core of advisors, these likewise officials or intellectuals rather than politicians themselves. This was not accidental. Even more than Lal Bahadur Shastri, Mrs. Gandhi needed to assert her independence from the Congress syndicate which had chosen her. Socially, she shared little with the party bosses. Her own friends came from a more rarefied milieu. She could not be certain when they might try to unseat her. Thus, she came to rely on the advice of the mandarins around her, who had no political ambitions themselves. But they did have the political views to which, in time and for her own reasons, she came to subscribe. After the elections of 1967, Morarji Desai once more made manifest his desire to become the Prime Minister. A compromise was worked out under which he would serve as finance minister and deputy prime minister. Hemmed in by the syndicate and threatened by Desai, the prime minister now sought to mark out her own identity by presenting herself as a socialist. This was done on the advice of P. N. Haskar. There was a strong moral core to the socialism of P. N. Haskar and his colleagues. However, for the Prime Minister, the appeal was pragmatic, a means of distinguishing herself from the Congress old guard. Let us now discuss the spree of Indira Gandhi's socialist decisions. In May 1967, Indira Gandhi presented a 10-point program of reform to the party, which was based on the socialist lines. The syndicate was unenthusiastic about it, but the program appealed to the younger generation who saw the party's recent reverses as a consequences of the promises unfulfilled over the years. The more important agenda of this program was the nationalization of banks. In the first week of 1969, Indira Gandhi openly sided for the immediate nationalization of banks. On returning to Delhi, Mrs. Gandhi divested Morarji Desai of the finance portfolio. He was a known opponent of bank nationalization. He believed that the state takeover of banks would reduce the resources available for economic development and increase bureaucracy and red tape. After relieving Desai of the finance ministry, Mrs. Gandhi issued an ordinance announcing that the state had taken over 14 privately owned banks. The nationalization of banks was challenged in the Supreme Court. The challenge was upheld, but the judgment was immediately nullified by a fresh ordinance brought in by the government, signed this time by the president. In the first 6 months of the state control, there was a massive expansion in the banking sector. As many as 1100 new branches opened, most of them in remote rural areas that had never before been serviced by formal credit. With the banks nationalized, Mrs. Gandhi now turned to the abolition of the privileges of princes. When their states merged with the Union, the princes were given a constitutional guarantee that they could retain their titles, jewels, and palaces, be paid an annual privy purse in proportion to the size of their states, and be exempt from central tax and import duties. The Home Minister Y. B. Chauhan was asked to commence negotiations with princes, represented in these talks by the Maharaja of Dragandra. It was hoped the princes would be amenable to the change. If not, a constitutional amendment would have to be brought. Chauhan and Dragandra had several long meetings in 1968, but no compromise would be reached. Meanwhile, the Congress was split in 1969, the event which we will discuss in our next video. On 18th May 1970, the last day of the summer session of Parliament, Y. B. Chauhan introduced a bill calling for a constitutional amendment annulling the privileges of the princes. The bill was taken up in the next session when Mrs. Gandhi described it as an important step in the further democratization of our society. The Lok Sabha adopted the bill by the necessary two-third margin, 336 for, 155 against. However, in the Rajya Sabha, the motion failed to be carried by a single vote. The Prime Minister had apparently anticipated this adverse vote in the upper house, for soon afterwards a presidential order was issued de-recognizing the princes. With regard to bank nationalization too, the court had put a spanner in the works. This fresh challenge to her authority prompted the Prime Minister to dissolve Parliament and call for a fresh mandate from the people. Another agenda in her program was the guaranteed minimum wages for rural and industrial labor. Speaking to the Lok Sabha in February 1968, she stressed the problems of landless labor, expressed her concern for all the minorities of India, and defended the public sector from criticisms that it was not making profit. In her Independence Day address from the ramparts of the Red Fort, she singled out industrialists and businessmen who had the nerve to talk of worker indiscipline while continuing to make big profits and draw fat salaries. In 1969, she passed Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. The act ensured that the operation of the economic system does not result in the concentration of economic power in the hands of few. It was meant to control monopolies and to prohibit monopolistic and restrictive trade practices. These views resonated with the so-called Young Turks in the Congress, who started a socialist ginger group within the party. This used pulpit of parliament to ask embarrassing questions of the more conservative ministers. The Young Turk Chandrasekhar raised charges of corruption against Morarji Desai's son Kanti. He also insinuated that the finance minister had issued licenses out of turn to a large industrial house. It was believed that he was speaking as proxy for Prime Minister. Anyway, she refused to censor him. But Indira Gandhi was still not strong enough to defy Congress. Her chance came in the summer of 1969, when Dr. Zakir Hussain died halfway through his term as president. This was the time when Indira Gandhi decided to establish her power by opposing the syndicate's presidential candidate with her own candidate. This open defiance led to another important event, the Congress split. In our next video, we will discuss the Congress split of 1969. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share and comment because discussion is solution. For more discussions, please subscribe our channel.